You're listening to Himalayan Adventure by Vaile. Chapter 25.
The fall from the top of the crevasse took a little over 1 second. The sickening feeling pushed Burnmaster's racing heart into the back of his throat and trapped his scream. As gravity took hold of him, he tightened his grip around Isabelle and didn't look down. His only thought was that the impact of the landing might bounce Isabelle out of his grasp and send her reeling into the depths of the crevasse. He never saw the snow-covered ledge that raced up underneath him. He hit it with a bone-jarring crunch that drove the breath from his lungs. The covering of snow, which was a meter thick along the length of the ledge, saved him from serious injuries. His right leg crumpled under him and he smashed down against the ice wall of the crevasse. His head and shoulder bore most of the impact. It all happened so fast he didn't feel a thing. His final thought before losing consciousness was that Nikki had been right. His grip around Isabelle never faltered and his body protected hers from the punishing impact. She lay stunned for a few seconds, until the cold of the snow against her right cheek revived her. The sudden darkness confused her and she blinked a few times to try and clear her vision. Burnmaster's iron grip around her had gone slack. She waited for him to move and when he didn't, she wriggled out from under his arm and got to her hands and knees in the snow. As she was turning towards him, there was a loud whomp. Next to her, followed by another loud whomp, and then a heavy impact that knocked her sideways. She heard Gull's and Laheeti's voices close to her as the world spun around and she sprawled through the snow. She slid to a halt, but her surprise turned to panic as the ledge underneath her legs suddenly disappeared. Her fingers clawed at the snow, but the weight of her lower body continued to drag her over the edge. The snow piled around her arms and chest shifted aside like desert sand as she made desperate grabs forward. Her hands plowed twin paths through the snow that would reveal her final moments before tumbling into the abyss. "Help me," she shrieked. I'm falling in." "Isabelle," screamed Laheeti. Nikki's voice was further away in the dark. "Isabelle, where are you?" she asked. Isabelle felt the rough rock surface scraping up her rib cage as she slowly slid over the edge of the ledge. I'm here," she gasped. "Follow my voice." Laheeti's fingers probed the area around him with growing urgency but found nothing. He tried to blink away the darkness. "Where are your hands?" he exclaimed. "I can't feel them anywhere." "In front of you," she shrieked. Her legs and most of her body were now dangling over the abyss. "Right in front of you. Hurry, Laheeti, I'm falling." "Oh God, I can't hold on." Laheeti felt himself get gently shifted aside as Gulbenkian moved forward and thrust his huge hands into the snow. A heartbeat later, his fingers locked around Isabelle's slender wrists and he pulled her out of the abyss and back onto the ledge. Laheeti breathed a sigh of relief and hugged her in the darkness. In the quiet moment that followed, she realized the howl of the avalanche was gone, and the crevasse was deathly silent. The only sound was a distant drip, 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 like a leaking tap. The danger of dying quickly in the avalanche had been replaced with the danger of dying slowly in the crevasse. But alive they were. The ledge was there, just like Nikki said it would be. When Isabelle's heart rate had returned to normal, she asked, "It was you who knocked me over the edge, wasn't it?" Laheeti sounded sheepish. "I think so, sorry," he replied. "The next time you jump into a crevasse to escape a huge avalanche, could you be more careful, please?" Isabelle added. He laughed and said, "Got it." She turned to the big islander. "Thanks, Gull," she said. "That's okay," Gulbenkian stammered. "I'm glad I got you. You came pretty close to going over the edge. Maybe we shouldn't tell your parents about that. The way things are going, I'm not going to be able to tell them about this trip to Nepal at all," Isabelle mused. A horrible thought passed through Gulbenkian's mind. "Do you know where Burnmaster is?" he asked. "He's here somewhere," Isabelle said, and searched around until she found his unmoving body. When she shook him gently, there was no response. "I think the fall has knocked him out," she explained. "We hit the ground really hard. Pemba's unconscious, too," Twig said, shuffling over to the voices. "It was further down to this ledge than I remembered," said Nikki. "Are you injured, Nikki?" asked Gull. "Yeah," Nikki said. "My first fall into this crevasse almost killed me, and the second fall has." She paused and winced, then continued. "The second fall has basically done the job." They retrieved their torches from their rucksacks and switched them on. The yellow beams of light brightened their ledge but did little to illuminate the yawning cavern next to them. Isabelle glanced at the edge where she almost fell to her death and shuddered. She turned her attention to Burnmaster. Nikki crawled over using her good arm and they spent a minute trying to revive him, without success. Isabelle gently wiped off the blood that covered one side of his face. Having no idea of his injuries, they dared not move him in case they made things worse. Pemba's situation was no better. Twig found a purple bruise on the Nepalese boy's temple that explained the concussion. He pressed a ball of snow against the spot to limit the swelling. They took stock of their situation in gloomy silence. The walls of the crevasse were vertical and hard as concrete. The avalanche had covered the mouth of the crevasse, leaving them in almost total darkness. More worryingly, that meant the crevasse had been completely obscured from the outside. They were now sealed inside the mountain, and it would be impossible for anybody to find them. This was even worse than being trapped in the bus under the landslide. Nikki remembered that Burnmaster had put an ice screw in and thrown the yellow climbing rope into the crevasse. If they could find it, they could climb out one at a time. They pinned their hopes on it and excitedly searched the area using all of their torches. 10 minutes later, they gave up. The rope was gone. The avalanche must have seized it and wrenched the ice screw from the wall. It was either at the bottom of the crevasse or the bottom of the mountain. Neither of those possibilities was any help. The torches were switched off one at a time and the darkness closed in. Isabelle left hers on and slumped down against the wall in defeat. It wasn't fair that the two most experienced Himalayan climbers were out of action. More than ever, she needed their sage advice. Then she looked at Pemba and suddenly remembered the sat phone. Feeling energized, she patted down his jacket and found the phone. The first thing she did was check the battery power. Less than 5%, not good at all. Perhaps enough power for one call only, so she had better make it count. She moved along the ledge until she found a spot at which the sat phone seemed to have good reception. Does anybody know the number for the emergency services? Mountain rescue or something? Isabelle asked. Everybody looked at one another and shook their heads in silence. Have a look in the call log, suggested Laheeti. If we call one of those numbers, at least we'll know there's somebody on the other end of the line. She found the call log and scrolled through the list of numbers. One particular number had been regularly called as recently as yesterday. She pointed it out to her audience. They shrugged and agreed that it was as good as any. She dialed. Her call was immediately answered by an arrogant male voice speaking a foreign language. Isabelle didn't catch a word of it. There was a communion of worried looks on the ledge. Isabelle said slowly and clearly, "Whoever you are, I need you to listen very carefully. Do you understand?" There was a brief silence, followed by a reply in English. "Who is this? My name is Isabelle O'Donnell, and I'm part of a climbing expedition in Nepal. We've been buried by an avalanche on Yala Peak, and we need immediate help." A pause, then the voice said suspiciously, "Put Pemba on the phone. He's injured and can't talk right now," Isabelle stated. That got the stranger's attention. "What do you mean he's injured?" he barked. "What happened to him?" "He's unconscious," Isabelle explained. "He must have hit his head when we jumped into this crevasse." "Unconscious?" the male voice exclaimed. "Is he breathing?" Isabelle didn't have time for this. "Yes, he's breathing," she replied. "Look, there are several injured people here and Pemba is just one of them. The expedition leader has also been knocked unconscious. I need you to call whatever emergency services are in the Langtang area and get them to help us." "Okay," the voice said. "Tell me exactly where you are." Isabelle breathed a sigh of relief. Now they were on the right track. "We're in a crevasse on the south side of Yala Peak," she said. The stranger stifled a scornful laugh. "The south side of Yala is pretty big, you know," he scoffed. "Is that all you can tell me? There are a lot of crevasses in that area." The emergency services could be searching for decades. Can't you be more specific?" Isabelle's anger began to rise. "No, I can't be more specific," she snapped, "because I wasn't paying attention to which crevasse I jumped into when I was trying to escape from the killer avalanche." Nikki placed a calming hand on Isabelle's shoulder. Okay, keep your hat on," the stranger replied. Isabelle could have strangled him. "We'll search," he added, then he loudly cleared his throat and continued, "I mean, the emergency services will search all of the crevasses in that area. You'll be found sooner or later." Isabelle hoped it would be sooner rather than later. She took a deep breath. "There's something else," she said. "The crevasse is covered with snow." "You mean there's some snow inside the crevasse?" the voice asked. "Don't worry, that's a good sign. It means the mouth of the crevasse is still visible and it's easy to find." "No, I mean the mouth of the crevasse is totally covered by snow," Isabelle explained carefully. "It's pitch black in here. We're buried in this mountain," the stranger snorted. "Well, that's just great," he sneered. "So basically you're saying that you're impossible to find." Isabelle was rapidly becoming frustrated with his negative attitude. "Not impossible, just very difficult," she snapped. She paused to regain her composure and added, "Look, is there an adult there I can talk to?" The stranger didn't miss a beat. "Funny," he said, "I was about to ask you the same question." The nerve of this idiot, thought Isabelle. "Look, buddy," she retorted, "this is serious. My life and the lives of everybody here, including Pemba, are in grave danger. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Yeah, I've got the message, the stranger replied. By the sounds of things, I'm your one and only hope. Isabelle's hand tightened convulsively on the sat phone. Geez. This phone is almost out of power, she muttered. I don't have time for this. Just then Pemba stirred. Raising his head heavily, he saw that Isabelle was talking on his sat phone. He groaned and lay back. Is that Zaw? He croaked. Isabelle looked down at Pemba, then asked into the phone, Is your name Zaw? It might be, the stranger replied defensively. Who wants to know? She covered the mouthpiece and said. I think it's Zaw. Tell him that we're in the crevasse that Abby found Nicky Zipster in, Pemba said with a sigh. Isabelle hesitated. What are you talking about? She asked. You found Nicky on the glacier. Pemba interrupted her. Just tell him, he said firmly. Frowning, Isabelle repeated the information to Zaw in a tone of voice that suggested she didn't believe a word she was saying. Zaw started to reply when the phone suddenly ran out of power and went dead. A tense silence filled the crevasse. Everybody stared at the Nepalese boy lying in the snow. Isabelle dropped the sat phone next to him and waited for him to explain himself. You said you found Nicky up on the glacier, she said pointedly. Pemba sighed. His voice had the quiet resignation of a confession. Yes, I did say that, he mumbled. It was unnecessary to point out that he had lied. There would be time later to find out why. She thought about what he had said. Who are Abby and Zaw? She asked. He closed his eyes. You'll find out pretty soon, he replied weakly. You'll find out everything pretty soon. His voice faded away and he lost consciousness again. The two teenage yetis were still on the glacier when the avalanche struck. There was no need for them to hurry down the mountain. They could leave a day later and still beat the humans to the bottom. While lying in their snow cave, they heard the rumble of a distant avalanche, but that sort of thing was so frequent in this area that they gave it little thought. Isabelle's call changed everything. When it abruptly ended, Zaw and Abby had worried looks on their furry faces. Pemba was hurt and they didn't know how bad. They could imagine a lot of horrible possibilities. They both wanted to climb into the crevasse and help him, but that would mean revealing themselves to everybody down there. It was one thing for Abby to pull a semi-conscious Nicky Zipster out of the crevasse, but another thing entirely for two yetis to rescue an entire expedition. At some point they would be seen and then the game would be up. Abby fidgeted nervously. Isabelle didn't say how many people are injured, did she? She asked. Zaw shook his head. No, but it sounds like the teenagers are okay, he replied. Even if they are, they can't get down the mountain on their own, Abby mused. Zaw nodded in agreement and said, Yes, I know. What are we going to do? Abby asked. The only thing we can do, Zaw replied. Call in a rescue team from Shangri-La. Abby laughed softly. How ironic, she said. Despite all of our effort to make sure they find no trace of a yeti, Burnmaster and the others might be brought to Shangri-La after all. Zaw raised the sat phone. Maybe, he replied. Whatever the team leader decides to do, I'm sure we won't have much say in the matter.
That is the end of this chapter. To listen to the next chapter on YouTube or to purchase the digital ebook from Amazon, see the links in the description.